Hey, what's up, Wire family? Welcome back to another video. So glad you guys are watching this. We start a brand new conversation today. It's kind of an in-between series. It's called Trending. And today we're talking about arguing, which is a big thing right now, and I think an important conversation to have in our culture. So I'm so glad you guys are watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, share it with somebody, hit that notification bell so you know every time we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching. Let's jump right into it. Okay, fun fact, almost an entire hour of every day is spent doing one thing with our families, arguing. In fact, research shows that we average around 6 arguments a day with our family members, which is kind of crazy, right? That's an average of 42 arguments a week, which sounds like a lot, but it doesn't stop there. We argue about 180 times with our families in a single month, which means that that's over 2,000 arguments in an entire year, over 365 days. Talk about a lot of arguing. In fact, if you're anything like me, you find yourself arguing with other people or listening to other people argue or getting caught up in arguments that you don't want to be in a lot, right? People argue over sports, politics, family stuff, friendship drama, and ultimately, what's the best Billie Eilish song, or if LeBron is really the greatest of all time. Those are the kind of arguments that we have. You might feel like you spend a ton of your conversations with other people just simply plain arguing. I mean, just stop and think about the last argument that you got into or witnessed with someone else. Was it this week, this morning, maybe 5 minutes before you started watching this video? What was it about? Was it something really big and important, or was it something seemingly pointless? Either way, I know how you feel, because honestly, I've been there more times than I can count. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, whether you realize it or not, arguments happen all around us, especially right now with everything going on in our world. They happen a lot with all different kinds of people over all different kinds of things. And honestly, it'll probably be this way for the rest of your life. I mean, if you have to do, all you have to do is glance at social media to see people arguing over things like politics and religion to know that that is true, right? Arguments are everywhere you look. And I think most of us probably feel like all arguments are bad. I mean, conflicts usually don't make you feel great, and they can be really difficult and uncomfortable to have. In fact, I think most of us try to avoid arguing if we can, right? We may have strong opinions about things, but we don't argue them because we want to fit in and not stand out. We don't want to offend someone or make someone upset. But here's the thing. Not all arguments are bad. In fact, arguing can actually be good. If it's done in a healthy and respectful way, it can be a good thing. That's why I think this is an important subject to talk about. Because if we don't learn how to argue in a healthy way, the quality of our relationships with our friends, our family members, our teammates, the people in our small group, and pretty much everybody that you'll ever come in contact with is on the line. So I think this is an important conversation to have. You see, conflict is a part of life, and that's because relationships are a part of life. Whether it's with a friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, classmate, a parent, a sibling, a coach, someone in your small group, or a random person on social media. At some point, you're going to come into conflict. In other words, you're going to argue. And that can be challenging for a whole lot of reasons. I mean, for starters, feelings are usually involved, right? People don't usually fight about something they don't care about. I mean, think about it. When you fight with your parents over your grades, it's because your parents care about the grades that you get. When you fight with your best friend about the lie that they told you, it's because you care that your friends are honest. When you see adults fighting about things like who should be the next president, it's probably because they care about choosing the best person for the job. A lot of times we argue simply because we care a lot about what we're arguing about. Or we care about who we're arguing with, right? You don't want to see your friend make a bad choice. You don't want to see your girlfriend break up with you. You don't want your older sibling to talk to you that way. So you argue, not because you want to, but because you care that much about the other person. And in those cases, your feelings are even bigger deal because as it often happens in arguments, our feelings get hurt. Someone says something harsh or rude or deeply hurtful in the heat of an argument. And well, those things are hard to come back from. So, what do? Well, sometimes we avoid the person altogether, right? We don't want to talk to them, we ghost them, we completely disappear. We hope that eventually the hurt feelings or the reasons why we argued will just disappear too. Or maybe we do talk about it, just not to them. Instead of talking to the person we argued with, we talk to everyone else. But that can get us anywhere closer to solving the issue. I think one of the biggest reasons arguments can be challenging to navigate is this: the other person thinks differently than we do. Now, maybe you've fought with a friend who thought using certain words was okay, but you 100% believed those words were hurtful. Or maybe you fought with a teammate because they had a totally different strategy on how to win the game. Or maybe you've seen people argue in the comment section of an Instagram because they had totally opposite views from each other. Regardless of who is arguing, usually this is what happens. Instead of listening to what someone else has to say or talking to them calmly about our viewpoint or even ignoring it altogether, we jump right into an argument. Why? Because honestly, we can't understand how they could think differently than we do. So what do? Well, we spend our energy trying to convince them that we are right. After all, isn't that the whole point of an argument? To prove your point? To get the other person to come to your side, to win, to be right? You see, I think the biggest problem we have when it comes to the way that we navigate arguments is that we feel like there has to be a winner and a loser. And I don't know about you, but I definitely don't like to lose. That's the mindset a lot of us have when it comes to arguments. We want to win. We want to be right. And it doesn't matter what we have to say or do to make sure at the end of it, we come out on top. But what if that's the problem holding us back? What if arguing to win isn't really a win at all? What if trying to be right isn't actually right? Remember what we said? Conflict happens no matter how hard we may try to avoid it or distance ourselves from it. And at some point, we're going to find ourselves arguing with someone or being argued with. And then because that's the case, I think it's important that we learn a better way to handle it, a way that allows us to aim for more than just being right. So today, we're going to look at a verse in the New Testament of the Bible, written by Jesus' half-brother, James. Now, James wrote a letter to a group of Christians in the early church, and there's some wisdom that was an absolute game changer when it comes to how we can handle arguments. Check it out. This is what he said. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. James 1:19. Now, notice the word that James used here. He said, everyone. So basically, James came out of the gate saying, what I'm about to tell you it's for everyone. Not just the people I argue with or agree with, not just the people who think they're right, not just the people with the biggest tempers or the most passionate voices. This is for all of us. Now, because James wrote this letter to people who were following Jesus, I think the instruction is even more powerful. The message is for everyone, but it's especially important for those of us who believe in Jesus. And as followers of Jesus, this is how we're supposed to communicate to other people. This is how we're supposed to argue. So, what did James say we're supposed to do? Well, first, he told us to be quick to listen. In other words, when you find yourself in an argument, listen first. Do your best to hold off from speaking until you've actually made an effort to listen, to hear what the other person is saying. I think it's just applying this first piece of wisdom alone could solve a lot of our disagreements, don't you? I mean, so often the reason arguments get so heated or go on for so long is because we don't make any effort to listen to the other person, or we don't feel like they're listening to us. And James followed that by telling us now to be slow to speak. Now, for some of us, this one is particularly difficult, right? We want to speak what's on our minds all the time, but especially in an argument. The thought of not saying what we think or feel, well, that's just crazy. But remember, slow to speak doesn't mean saying no to speak. It doesn't mean that we just sit back and take it. James wasn't asking us not to defend ourselves or our points of view. Instead, he was asking us to pause before we do, to stop before we talk, to think before we speak. I don't know about you, but in my experience, most of the things I've regretted in arguments are things I've said without thinking about them first. Taking a minute to pause, choosing to be slow to speak could be the answer to that. Now, if James were writing this letter today, he might also include be slow to text, slow to post, slow to comment, slow to talk behind someone's back. Whatever the response may be for you, pause and think about it before you actually do it. Now, all of this really adds up to the final thing that James wrote here. He said, slow to become angry. This is a total shift in the way we approach arguments. After all, aren't we usually arguing because we're angry? James wasn't asking us not to be angry. He wasn't asking us to ignore our feelings, but he was asking us to lead with another feeling, a stronger feeling in our arguments. Love. Choosing to be slow to become angry means choosing love when we want to hate. It means focusing on the other person, not the point that we're trying to make. It means valuing the relationships more than being right. In other words, when we argue, I think we need to remember this. Care more about the person that you're arguing with than the point that you're trying to make. Listen, arguing happens. It's a part of life. But now how it turns out really depends on how we choose to handle it. So the next time that you find yourself in a position to argue, what would it look like for you to care more about the person that you're arguing with than the point that you're trying to make? What would it look like for you to try some of what James was talking about here? To be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. I think if you do, you'll find that the way you argue and the way that you feel will both change for the better. Now, of course, I know this isn't always easy, so try giving these few things a shot this week. Number one, just memorize this verse. Really commit James 1:19 to memory. Trust me, it's that important. You want this to be your brain, you want you to be in your brain ready to go the next time you find yourself about to argue. When you memorize it, you'll think of the verse first. It'll be a reminder of how you can handle your argument well. Second is apply it to someone. Think about the person in your world who needs to actually follow James' instructions when it comes to arguing. Who do you find yourself tempted to argue with often? Someone in your family, a friend, a teammate? In your mind, put that face next to this verse. Maybe even write both down side by side and keep it somewhere where you can see it. That way, when you think of that person, you'll also think of James' words on how you can better approach them. And then put yourself in their shoes. This one is tough, I know, but I want to challenge you to see more in that person than just your differences, your argument and your stance. I want you to try and see and understand their side. This is a part of being quick to listen. It's being quick to understand another person's point of view. Jesus could have won every argument ever, but he still talked to people. He still made time to listen to people. He still made an effort to hear their perspectives, and putting yourself in someone else's shoes will help you do the same. It doesn't mean that you'll always agree with what they think, but it does mean that you'll try to understand why they think that. It means that you'll try to understand them. Remember, care more about the person that you're arguing with than the point that you're trying to make. And that's exactly what we're going to keep talking about in small groups. So not everyone in your small group has the exact same view of the things that you do, and that's okay. Your small group can actually help you understand others' views and ways of thinking. That's part of the reason we have small groups. Now, as you find time to connect with your small group sometime this week, I want you to think about this question. When I argue, do I argue to win or to understand? I think that's an important question to navigate. So thank you guys for watching. If you have a small group, make sure you're connecting with them on Zoom sometime this week or through text messaging or group chat, however you guys communicate. If you're not connected in a small group, make sure you contact us. Let us know. We want to help you get connected. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.